Okay, I could give you 20 minutes on why the modern American mystery novel is the most important literature being written today. I could also give you another good 10 minutes on why AI sucks. But really, what the hell? What do you guys want to talk about? Seriously, anything.
Well, we came to hear you tell us stories and talk to us. So you tell us stuff.
Okay. Years ago, I taught a writing course at the at the University of Minnesota. And that year, Carol Bly, the late poet and essayist, was their guest chairperson. And she did like master classes and seminars and stuff like this. And they throw her a party at Prospect Center, or Prospect Park Lakeview Theater. And I was invited. Now I got to tell you right off, when the University of Minnesota English department throws a cocktail party, they're not screwing around. These guys were serving up martinis that would take the paint off your collar.
Oh.
So we're at the party, it's going well. And then they introduce Carol. Everybody applauds, and she says a few words. Everybody applauds some more. Now they're going around the room and they're introducing the adjuncts. The people are basically there to teach one class, and then they're gone. And then they get to me. And I stand up and I say, my name is David Housewright. I'm teaching a course in the modern American mystery, which we all know is the most important literature being written today. And I sit down. Carol's having none of this. Carol crosses the room like a linebacker, grabs me, big one, grabs me, yanks me out of my chair, says, sir, you cannot make a blanket statement like that and sit down. Sir, I demand you defend your thesis. Well, my thesis is I'm working on my fourth martini and I'm wondering how I'm going to get home. I am in full-blown smart-ass mode. I know a little something about it, right? So I say, okay, there's this guy named, what the hell was his name? Bowman, something like that. This is late 90s. And he wrote a book called Down and Out in America, which was about homelessness in America. And it was well received. He was on Meet the Press, that kind of thing. Then John Grisham writes The Street Lawyer about homelessness in America. Sells 3.5 million copies and gets a movie deal. Who is going to have the greater impact on the public debate? And I sit down. This starts an argument. English professors and grad students arguing is a thing. I wish I had brought my notebook, and it occurred to me, people are throwing insults at each other. And I'm like, oh my God, a pox on your house, I say. But the gist of it was, and one guy, he was arguing about what difference does it make if you write the great American novel if nobody reads it. This sort of thing. Okay. Shortly after, a couple of years later, I was asked to teach a course at the Loft Literary Center. You guys know anything about that? No, look it up. Anyway, so they're throwing a cocktail party. Now, their idea of a party, though, is lukewarm fruit punch and cookies the size of Frisbees, right? So in this big conference room, all these people were going around introducing themselves. And they get to me, and I think, well, it worked before. So I said, I'm David Housewright. I'm teaching a course on the modern American mystery novel, which we all know is the most important literature being written today. Silence. 40 people in the room being silent. That's a lot of silence. So I go into Rodney Dangerfield. Whoa, should have quit while I was a hat guy over here says, what makes you think you're a hat?
Oh.
Woman stands up, introduces herself. She's teaching a class of poetry, which she says, we all know is the least important literature being written today. They gave her an ovation. And I'm sitting there going, okay, this isn't gonna work out. But here's my thing. I was being a smart ass when I first said it. And truthfully, I don't really believe it. What I do believe is that good writing is where you find it. I have been insulted, usually in a kind of a passive way, by literary writers. Oh, you write crime fiction? Oh, well, I write literary fiction. Whatever the hell that is. And my argument is, as I said, good writing is where you find it. I write crime fiction, so let's talk about that. I think the best mysteries are about more than who done it. They're about more than who killed Mr. Body in the library with a candlestick. They're about more than the brilliant investigator who plays by his own rules, stop the evil criminal mastermind before he strikes again. I think that, like I said, the best crime movies go beyond that. And you find all of the themes, if you will, the issues, you will, in literary fiction, in crime fiction. Walter Mosley, writing about being black in America. Dennis Lehane just wrote a book called Small Mercies, dealing with Boston school segregation and racism in the early 70s. Marcy Rendon, Minnesota girl, writing about Native Americans up on the Red River. My pal Ellen Hart, writing about being lesbian, being gay. And you get a lot of other stuff too. You get Lawrence Block, one of my heroes, writes about alcoholism. You get those things in crime fiction, but they're discounted because of where they're found on the shelves in fine bookstores like Majors and Quinn. And it annoys me. I remember I was at a party, and there's this guy, and he's sitting on the sofa, and he was an attorney, he was retiring. He's writing a book. And my friends who were there said, "Look, we're going to talk about this." Let him bring me over, and he goes, "You write books?" I go, "Yeah." "What do you write?" And I go, "I write mysteries." Looked me right in the eye, no further away from me than you are, and goes, "Oh, well, I write literary fiction." And my friends grabbed me and hustled me out of the room because they thought I was going to disrupt the party. No. And it raises the question, what the hell is literature anyway? Lonesome Dove won the Pulitzer Prize for literature. Mary McMurtry, one of my favorites. Is that literature? Or is that a Western? A couple of obvious examples of Lord of the Rings. Is that literature? Is that fantasy? Isaac Asimov, the Foundation trilogy, which I love. Is that literature, or is that science fiction? Gone with the Wind, somewhat problematic book these days. Also won the Pulitzer Prize, I think, in 1934. Don't hold me to that. Is that literature? Is that historical romance? I mean, A Christmas Carol was a ghost story. That's what it was meant to be. Back in those days, that's when you had, it wasn't Halloween. Christmas was where all the ghosts came out. In England, anyway. Cormac McCarthy, late Cormac McCarthy, who I also like very much, his work, wrote All the Pale Horses. Is that literature? Is that a Western? He wrote The Road. That literature? That's speculative fiction. He wrote No Country for Old Men. Is that literature? Or a crime novel with the worst ending I've ever read. It's terrible. So this is the argument. And I make no, I'll let you guys decide if my stuff is what Graham Greene called an entertainment. There's a hell of a lot to be said for that. Or just, if it's an entertainment, it's literature. But it annoys me when I get that. And you get it from a lot of people, but one of the interesting things I found was some writers, really good writers, like Louise Erdrich, don't think that. So, okay, so there's that story. Guys can work with me anytime here, just jump up and say, hey. All right, I'm going to tell you my AI story. Actually, it's not a story. It's more of a vent or rant in the other room. Because this is a common topic of conversation with writers. I've had people come up and ask me, do you use AI? Why no? No, I don't. Oh, maybe you should. Well, no. But this is a thing now. People are talking about it. People in my profession are talking about it. My take on AI is almost the same as what's literature. The best books have something to say about everything. About racism, sexism, and homophobia, and political corruption, and pick a subject, and you find it in books. Not just mysteries, but everything. And that those, okay, let me try this. When I was a kid, and I announced I was going to be a writer, because really, there are all these things like that. I remember somebody, and I wish I could remember who, but I can't, told me that if you take an infinite number of monkeys and gave them an infinite number of typewriters, eventually one of them would write Hamlet. And my response then is the same response I have now. Would the monkey know it wrote Hamlet? Would it know it wrote a play infused with themes and issues and sensibility and poetry that would enthrall audiences and readers for 400 years? You think about all the great books, everything, and even some not such great books that have themes, that have ideas that the writer wants to explore, everything from Atlas Shrugged to The Maltese Falcon. And these themes and these issues are in the book because the writer put them there. Because the writer thought this was important. Walter Mosley, Devil in a Blue Dress. Lizzie Rollins dealing with white guys on the pier while I was talking to a white woman who was there because Walter Mosley put it there. Okay? And you can think of 1,000 examples. All right. Now we have AI, which reads every single book ever written in history. And then some guy will type in instructions, say, give me a mystery in the vein of Dennis Lehane. And the AI will spit it out in about 10 minutes. And it might even be readable. But if it has anything to say about the human condition, if it has anything to say about real regurgitating what somebody else already wrote in their book. And that's why I think AI, every book published with AI should have a little X in the corner. So reader knows that what they're buying is really fundamentally a literary version of music. Okay, moving on. We're having fun now, aren't we?
Okay, so not for writing, but then what, do you think AI does have a purpose, or do you think it's?
I think it may have a purpose in that it helps you come to answers quickly. And when I say answers, I'm talking about like scientific stuff.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not talking about creativity, because they're not creative. All they do is copy what others have done and rewrite it. And you could argue an awful lot of writers do exactly that. We read everybody else and then we write a book like that. Okay, fine. That's the writer's choice, and if they can find somebody to publish it, or if they publish it themselves, okay, fine. But to use AI to write a book and pretend it's coming from a real person, that's wrong, in my opinion. But, again, there's pluses and minuses. That's all I got. Any questions?
How did you come up with the idea for them bones?
Okay. Question is, how did I come up with the idea of them bones? Them bones, of course, deals with the theft of dinosaur fossils. I'm embarrassed to tell you this story. Usually I have a whole pocket full of ideas that come to me as I'm working on whatever it is I'm working on. So I get done writing Man in the Water, which is the previous book, and I didn't have anything. Now normally, after I get done writing a book, I'll spend a couple of weeks pacing back and forth, telling everybody that's it, I'm done, I got nothing more to say, I got no more stories to tell. And, the first couple of books is people were alarmed, and now they're just like, oh, shut up. And then after a while I go, whoa, wait, what if? Writers look for what we call the out of whack event, the thing that's just not right. Something's wrong, right? And then we take it from there. Now in this case though, I didn't have that. I can tell you stories about where I came up with books like the one before Man in the Water was In a Hard Wind. Let me tell you this story so you know why the other story is so lame. Years ago, I read an article in the Boston Globe. Don't ask me why I was reading the Boston Globe. And it was about the guy who inspired the movie The Thomas Crown Affair. What happened was, he gets out of school, he goes to work for a bank, he was bored out of his mind. He keeps telling his friends how easy it would be to rob this bank. This is in the 70s. His friends keep telling him it's so damn easy, why don't you rob the bank? And then he does. He walks into the vault, he fills a shopping bag with cash, leaves it to his desk. 4 o'clock Friday comes around, everybody's leaving for the weekend, says goodbye to the security guy, goes home. Next Monday they come to the bank and they found out that like $284,000 just went poof. They figure out it was him very quickly, but he also went poof. Now because he was on film, they indicted him in absentia And the reason they did this is so he doesn't come back to Boston after 7 years and goes, ha ha ha, suckers, after the statute runs out. The U.S. Marshals was chasing this guy for 50 years. I am not exaggerating. And they could not find him. And then he dies. And something in his obituary alerted the marshals, which gives you an idea how thorough these guys are. They're reading obituaries from all around the country. Something in the obituary alerts the marshals. I called the marshals, they wouldn't talk. So they go to the family to interview the family, and the family admits that as this guy lay dying, literally on his deathbed, he told them he was the guy that inspired the Thomas Crown Affair. And then Prithee was gone. He moved to California, got married, started a business, raised a family, was the pillar of the community. 50 years. So I got that, and I stick it in my pocket because I don't know what to do with it. I'm not going to rewrite the Thomas Crown. So I stick it in my pocket, and I have it for a couple of years, more than a couple of years. Then one day, a buddy of mine, she was an art director back when I was in the advertising business, and we worked together, we were friends. And she asked me if I would talk to her book club. I don't do book clubs, but okay. And her name was JC, and I used the name in the book. You guys read the book. So she introduces me to her book club, and the book club is meeting around a fire ring on a hill behind everybody's houses. And you can only get to this hill by walking through somebody's yard. There's no street. It is owned by one of the people, one of the houses living around the hill. And he lets everybody go up there. Weddings were held up there, this sort of thing. I think JC owns a sliver of it. Now the guy's getting old. He's pushing 90. They're talking about assisted living. And they're wondering what's going to happen. His kids don't live there. They're not going to protect this hill. They're going to sell it to developers. And I go, oh. And that became in a hard net. I combined one thing with the other thing. And this is where the book came from. The Outer Whack event that made me go, oh, what if? So I get done with Man in the Water, which is another story. My step-niece, my brother's stepdaughter, we were at a Christmas party, and she comes up to me and she tells me the story. And she's at a marina, I think in Florida. And some woman comes up to her and her husband, and says, can you help me find my husband? I can't find my husband. So Janet's husband, Chad, goes into the marina to see if he can find him, and she starts wandering around the piers, and looks down and finds the guy, and he's drowned. And he's holding a ladder that would allow him to climb up to the pier, to the dock. He's dead. Call the cops, she gets interviewed by the cops. A couple of weeks later, insurance company comes by, they interview her. She says to me, I never found out what happened. And I'm looking at it and I go, Janet, that may be one of the best Christmas gifts anybody ever gave me. And that is literally the first 3 pages of the book. Man in the Water. Oh, what can I do with that? All right. This is a long, drawn-out answer to your question. So I get done with Man in the Water, and I'm like, I got nothing. And my son, the economist, he's a financial guy. I'm not entirely sure what he does, but it seems to be very lucrative. Says, you should write about dinosaurs. Write about dinosaurs. I go, real dinosaurs? He goes, yeah. I should write a book about dinosaurs. He goes, yeah. What's the dinosaur's name? Well, you can call him anything. Call him Dan. I go, you're serious about, and he's, yeah. Shut up. Shortly afterwards, I'm at a writers' convention in San Diego. I'm I'm sitting around with Sam Wiseman and Gary Phillips and a couple of other guys, and Phillips looks at me and says, so how's what you up to? What are you working on now? I said, I'm writing about dinosaurs. He goes, really? And I go, should I tell you the first line? He goes, sure. I go, the Triceratops revealed itself 1 inch at a time. And he goes, really, how's you writing dinosaur porn? Is it coming to that? You know, St. Martin's, are they going to print this one? Or you got something else in it? Yeah. And my first thought was, there's such thing as dinosaur porn? Why, yes, there is. and I'm like, I'm surprised you know this, Gary, because I didn't. But, so it was a joke. It was a running gag, but I'm on the airplane flying home, and I'm starting to think, well, wait a minute. And then I start doing some research, and I discovered that not too long ago, Russell Crowe, the actor Russell Crowe, Leonardo DiCaprio, Nicolas Cage, a couple of other people got into a bidding war for the skull of a Tyrannosaurus Rex. And DiCaprio won. I think it was DiCaprio, don't hold me to that. And then shortly later, the guy who sold it to him was arrested for looting the dinosaur fossil from China and then selling it. And he had to give up the fossil. I don't think he got his money back. And the other guy went to prison, and I go, oh. And that's where I started doing the research, and that's where I started getting invested in the idea of the theft of dinosaur fossils and how they are, how they're found, how they're excavated from the Hell Creek Formation and all these different places and where the money is and so on and so forth. And a big chunk of the book takes place in Toronto, largely so I could deduct my vacation and my taxes, but so all that came together. That's the oddest one. I mean, most of the stories come to me, I get an idea and I go, what if I do this, and what if I do that, and then it becomes a story. But this is the one where it's right about dinosaurs. And now he's like, you want some more ideas? No, thank you, Nick, but appreciate it. That's an awful long answer to a simple question. Work with me, people. Okay, I'm going to tell you some more stories.
Hey. I'm trying to think of where some of the books came from. Because some of them just kind of like, probably the most complete was Jelly's Gold. I wrote a book called Madman on the Drum, which was very dark and very violent. It dealt with the kidnapping of a small child and all of this. So I'm working on the next book, and I thought, well, I'm going to do something lighter. Let's do a treasure hunt. My wife had written an article for History Channel on river pirates. So maybe I can do something I can do with river pirates on the Mississippi. And that didn't work out. How about the Great Lakes? Or anything. Nothing works out. So I'm in my office and I have a book shelf, and on the bookshelf is a copy of a book called John Dillinger's Spectator, which was written by Paul McAfee, who is a historian. He's also a PR guy. I used to work with him back in my advertising days. And I'm thinking, I got nothing. I look up and I see the cover of the book, and I go, Jelly's Gold. Click. And the story came to me in that moment. Frank Jelly Nash was a very prolific bank robber who lived in St. Paul, was in fact married to a Minnesota girl. This is in the 30s, when St. Paul was an open city. And all the criminals in the world would live in St. Paul. John Dillinger, the Barker brothers, Bob and Brood, and Creepy Carpus, and all these guys. Buzzy Siegel was there for a while. And as long as you paid your dues and did not so much as spit on the sidewalk, you were good. They would even help you if the FBI came looking for you. So Jelly robs, they call him Jelly because he used nitroglycerin to blow up bank vaults, which they used to call Jelly now. Don't know why. So he robs a gold shipment out of South Dakota. Now this is while they were actually building Fort Knox. This is while they were shipping gold to Fort Knox. So he robs the gold, he goes back to St. Paul, he has dinner with the Barkers. This is historic fact. The next day he gets the hell out of Dodge. And historians, certainly with Paul Maccabee, is convinced that the Barkers must have told him that they intended to kidnap William Ham of Ham Brewery, like the very next day, which was a complete and utter violation of the O'Connor system, which allowed them to live there as long as they did not commit a crime. So Frank said, I'm out of here. And he goes to Hot Springs, and then he gets arrested, and he ends up getting killed in the Kansas City Massacre. Historic fact. What happened to the gold? So I look at it, and it just comes to me, bing. This is a treasure hunt. Mackenzie and whoever are going to be searching for the gold bullion that Frank Nash stole in 1933, 34? I should read my own books. And I lived in the History Center library for a few weeks, and I'm reading all these diaries and all these letters from people during that period. And I'm stealing all this stuff. And I'm rewriting it to fit my story. So half the book basically takes place in 34, and the other half takes place in present time. And we go back in time as Mackenzie and these guys uncover information that will lead them to the goal. That was easily the most fun I had writing a book. And it just came together. I wrote in like 4 months. And it just worked very well. I got the most media attention of any book, most TV. Of course, nobody want to talk about the book. They want to talk about kinds of things. And won the Minnesota Book Award. So people ask me, what book should you read? My first question is, do you like dark, murderous books, or do you like something a little light? If you say light, you're going to Jelly's book. If you like dark, man, I'm a dark. Dark as it gets. Highway 61. Like to Die. Actually, there are a lot of books that get there.
Do you have the idea for your next book yet, or just no?
I have it in my head. I'm starting to write it down, not the book, but the whole thing, trying to figure out how I am a outliner. I know how the book ends before I write the first bit. I have it all pretty much figured out. It's not nearly as detailed as it was when I first started. When I first started, I owned my own ad agency. I'm spending 60-hour weeks sometimes. Writing time was at a premium. So I had everything outlined and worked out. So when I sat down at the computer, I never asked myself, what the hell was I thinking? I always knew where I was, and I knew what research I had to do and that sort of thing. Things went my way, so now I'm at home writing. So my outlines aren't nearly as detailed. Chapter 8, this is going to happen. Chapter 9, I mean, that's how it works. But the one I'm working on now, my wife, who has a book out, Majors and Quinn, called Gathering Spirits, and it's about ghosts and how to deal with ghosts and stuff like this. She got involved in this years ago, and she met people like Echo Bodine and oh God, what was the name of the woman who inspired the Ghost Whisperer? They had dinner in Cleveland. So she writes about this stuff, among other things. And she took me to Mantorville in southeastern Minnesota, a very small town. And what happened was, that phrase, in the 70s, these guys decided they're going to declare their entire town as a historic site. So people could not tear down their buildings. So they got these old buildings that date back to before Minnesota was even a state. They got an opera house from 1918, and this is part of what they get tourists to come in and check these out. They also embrace their ghosts. The opera house is haunted, this restaurant is haunted, the ruins of this brewery that have a fence around it are haunted, and things like that. They embrace those. And this is basically their brand. This is how they get people to come to Mantorville to explore the old buildings and talk about ghosts. So I go down there with her, and I'm just kind of basically following her around, which is what I do. And then it occurred to me, wait a minute. What if? Because they have ghost people come down there. You hear of people that they spend nights in haunted houses trying to speak to the ghosts. There are people in TV shows and all this. So what if somebody comes down there? They're looking for a bell. This historic town is trying to find a bell. They don't know what happened. And somebody says, hey, let's call the woman on the TV show Medium for Hire. And she'll come down and she'll ask our ghosts where the bell is. And this will be on TV. So we'll promote the town and the ghosts and everybody will be happy. So she comes down and she finds this woman who was killed, murdered in about 110 years ago. And she says she will tell the guys where the bell is if you find out who killed me, because I don't know. And the cops are like, well, we'd like to help you out, but we're a little busy. So the medium goes to Mackenzie and says, will you do this? Find this woman's killer. He says, no. She asks him some more, and he goes, hell no. But he finds out he likes the cameras. He's being filmed. He likes acting. So they'll have a conversation, but then they'll redo the conversation for the cameras. And he finds out this is a hoot. So what the hell? I'll go down there and I'll find the killer of this 110-year-old murder. I'll read all this stuff. And goes down there, and because of a reason I haven't figured out yet, they find the body of a woman who's been missing for 30 years. And now all of a sudden it isn't a hoot, it isn't a game, it isn't him having fun. This is a real murder. And now the cops are involved. And they want to know where he was 30 years ago, because how else would he be able to find his body? And don't tell me the ghost told you. I was in high school. I was a junior at Central High School in St. Paul. Unlikely story, which is, we'd figure out at the time. Right? I haven't figured out beyond that though. But that's what you do. You take an idea and you go with it until it's, and sometimes where you end up had nothing to do with where you began. But you just go, okay, well, what if this happened? What if that happened? I might end up doing something like this without any ghosts at all. Where they just simply find it, you know, maybe they're out camping, and they come across it, 30 years of everything right. I don't know. But that's how you do it. You just keep touching it until something comes to you.
See yourself writing any standalones or all-piece characters, or you like sticking with these characters?
I have 3 standalones. I have a book called The Devil and the Diva, which I wrote with my wife. I have a children's book, a young adult history called Finders Keeper, about a kid who finds a suitcase full of cash and thinks all of his problems are over. And I wrote that for my kids because they were too young to read my original book. But by the time the book was published, they're bored with my stuff. They're like, really? Sounds like the old man telling us another story. It's not like he's William K. Kruger. But I have that one, and I have another novella. It was this guy, and he had a series called Grifter's Song, and it's about a con man couple, and their different adventures. And he would like 3 novellas for every volume, and we do like a volume a year. And the conceit was that all these stories were written by different authors. The characters were the same, but each story was, you know, Louise Penny wrote one, and I wrote one. And they called me, and I was in the middle of something, and they said, we want to contribute. Well, no, I haven't got the time. I'm teaching this course, I got a book coming out, I'm writing this thing. You know, call me next year, I'll let you know. Okay. Almost immediately, I have the story in my head. What if I? And I'm trying to write my book. Damn it. So I call him up and I say, okay, I'll give you the story. And this is like September. He said, well, here's the thing, we got to have it by December. Oh, jeez. And I said, Frank, if you don't have it in 3 weeks, you're never going to get it. Because I just have to write this damn thing out of my head so I can go back to my book. And so I wrote it. It was called Dracula Wine. And I have to admit, my daughter liked it very much because it's in 3rd person. And as a gift, she gave me a review for the book, 2.5 stars. So, okay, this woman everybody thinks is dumb, but she's actually smarter than everybody else, and she gets a revenge in the air, 2.5 stars. Yeah, 2.5 stars. Well, thanks, Vic. Thanks, Victoria. I appreciate it. Such is my relationship with my child. Work with me, you guys. Give me something.
It's good when dads talk like that and do that with their kids, because I can remember stuff from small, and you sit there with your aerials up and it goes in forever.
It does. But as I was saying before, you're never a hero in your own house.
No, I suppose not.
They're like, really? Really? You got another one? God. Anyway, but I really didn't have any choice in that. I was always right. Always. For a brief period of time, I thought I might be able to replace Rod Carew at second base for the Twins, but that lasted until I saw my first breaking pitch. Yeah, so this is not going to work.
That Twins are hurting now. Yeah. They're taking out. They traded all the players.
I probably could get a gig now.
I bet you could.
No, I've always been a writer. And my parents, for reasons that were never explained to me, gave me a printing press when I was 12 years old. And it was one of those printing presses. It was hand cranked, and you punched out the words letter by letter on the tape. And you put the tape on the drum, and then you rolled the pages out, hit it up in your very first book, which was called Swinging Danger. And it was about, my first standalone, and it was about this kid who built a rope swing, what we used to call a Tarzan swing. And even though everybody told him he was gonna fall and break his neck, and he did fall, and he broke his wrist. And like all first novels, it was highly autobiographical. And that, I've been doing that ever since. I was working for the Tribune. I was stringing for the Tribune sports department. Covered 9-man, football in Fergus Falls, and AAU swimming, and Big Ten gymnastics when I was 18. What?
Do you still have a copy of that first book you wrote?
No, my mom. Okay, I left home, went to college, chased a journalism career, came back home, and she had given away all my stuff, all my Hardy Boy books, I had the first 2 editions of Fantastic Four comic books and all this stuff. Now I didn't know these were going to be worth a fortune. I'm just like, where's my stuff? Well, I gave it to the kid across the street. Mom, how could you? You want it back? Go tell the kid you want your stuff back. I never did. But I have a standing offer of $5,000 to anybody who could find the original copies of Swinging Danger. Because I sold them in the neighborhood. I printed like 15 of these. And, can't find them.
What happened was,
It wasn't real literature, so it just didn't, stand the test of time. But that was it. I was that guy. I've always been that guy. And now I've got 2 books. My 32nd will come out next June, unless I can talk them into bringing it out earlier or later. Because I appreciate you guys coming very, very much. But I think you'd be more likely to be here in February or October than you would be in the middle of August. Anyway, so I want to thank you all for coming. I appreciate it very much, listening to me go on and on